Now from there, let's shift a little bit towards the ASEAN and Southeast Asia. ASEAN as a community has kind of gelled now. It has all the members like Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, which matter. Korea is not part of it, okay, because Korea is part of the American system. And then we have the Southeast Asia, with which we have much more concern. ASEAN, we have not done the FTA yet. It is a very strong economic community, and Indonesia itself is 320 odd million people. That's the largest Islamic population country in the world. And then we have Malaysia, then we have Brunei. So each one of them have oil these days. Malaysia has it, and rubber and other natural resources. So they have now come out of that stage of colonialism or post-colonialism and are the new tigers. So China is doing the networking there. Now, they have a little bit love and hate relationship with China, which they don't have it in India. Because India as such, as an empire or as smaller kings, has never attacked anybody, ever in its history. Now, there are a number of these countries in East Asia, particularly so, but also Indonesia, also Malaysia. But now, what are these countries? Now, look at our border from Manipur to Myanmar. Big area, but problem because of dictatorship, etc. But otherwise, practically, even in the British time, it was considered part of India. Then we have Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and then Thailand. Now, by the way, it's all contiguous area. There is a transcontinental railway which has been planned. India is a part of it. But beginning itself at Myanmar, the problems are there. And Manipur problem is also to some extent related to that. But I will not go into the politics of that because it's very unfortunate things which have happened there. However, just think about it. The major projects which China has done, spent about $1 trillion on them in the last 10 years, India has not done. We can say India doesn't have that capital. But India has the capability to build those projects. So it can become part of somebody who provides the capital for this. Yes, Myanmar and Vietnam, etc. also don't have. But there is a direct connection now from Vietnam, from Laos. Myanmar thing is planned also, and that's a bit of history. I just come to for a moment. So Laos to China train every day, functional, no problem, viable. Vietnam, no problem. Some political problems are there which are sorted out because when economic interest is there, the political problems go away. Okay, then as I said, if India plans this transcontinental railway, has planned and does it. Okay, now there is a Nepal China link. There is an Afghanistan China link being built. So, if that happens, it's an Afghanistan-China independent link. It does not go through the 6 other Central Asian countries. Then, from Chabahar port, as part of our northern corridor, which is with Iran and Russia, we can go via Afghanistan and connect all the way to these 6 Asian countries as well as China from there. Slightly longer, but no political problem. Now, this is where the issue comes. How do you handle geopolitics? Afghanistan, for example, Taliban is there. Do we have good relationship with them now or bad relationship? I would think it is good relationship. Have we recognized that regime? No. Has USA recognized that regime? Well, USA signed treaty with them and brought them into power. Then how can they say that they have not recognized? They are the ones who have brought them into power. Be that as it may, what stops us? We have been sending aid, 50,000 tons of wheat also against Chabahar port. and so on. So why don't we send our ambassador there? China has sent the ambassador last week. So this is where again one thinks that how is your thinking, how is your government thinking, which goes. They feel that they should have a diplomatic relationship with Afghanistan. There are a number of reasons. In fact, we have a number of reasons that we should have, if China has. So China, India, we should compete in a friendly fashion and not crib about it. That that there is debt trap and all that. Which separately we discussed it. Debt trap is a bogey. All these projects which have not done very well because of timing, etc., can always be reworked, reconfigured. Swaps can be there. Instead of dollar to be returned, it can be renminbi. Loan can be converted into local currency. It can be remitted also partially. For example, Russia remitted $24 billion to African countries. Okay, so now let's summarize this. In our own area, it is in our interest to deal well with the Saarc countries. Nepal, we should not crib that Nepal is coming near China, etc., etc. If they are getting a project or number of projects, why would they not go to China? Think yourself, put yourself in your shoes. You want to do something, you need finances. The bank is giving you that finance. Why would you not deal with that bank, whether it's an American bank or a Chinese bank? So the thinking has to be opened up. So now we go back to Middle East. Middle East was important, is important, will continue to be important, politically speaking. And if IMEEC project succeeds, at least one project internationally, we should be able to say, in India, there are parts of it in India is successful. We don't have that claim. China has that claim. We have done 100 odd projects. Maybe 5-10 have not done too well. 80-90 have done well. So they can say that 80-90 projects we have done from our end of the country, to Asia, to Africa, to South America. We don't have that. Obviously, when they own those ports, they finance those ports, they finance those facilities, they would have an upper edge, right? So China is being smart. It is decoupling from Europe, and actually it is recoupling with the rest of the world. And Africa is a major one with 1.4 billion population and 55 countries. So in the next episode, we will consider what are the things that are happening in Africa. We have been discussing the evolution of various market mechanisms and the economic institutions. And briefly, after the Great Depression in the USA, which transferred somewhat in Europe also, the First World War, the coming of League of Nations, and the USA withdrawing from that, and therefore it's not working. Then finally, the establishment of United Nations immediately after Second World War, by which time the US was the dominant economic power. In about decades' time, Japan and the major European countries, that is Germany, France, England, came up again. Spain included to some extent Greece, Italy, and they formed an economic community. Was for steel and aluminium, coal first, and then it grew into an economic union, and then they have a European Parliament, but the individual parliament of the various countries also remain, and so also their foreign policy is in their hands. Now, the US set up a Marshall Plan. It was so called because the Secretary of State was Mr. Marshall, and it should try to revive the economies, infrastructure of Europe and Japan too, and extended them very low cost loans. And in about a decade's time again, their infrastructure was better, their industry was now better with the latest equipment, etc., etc. And they were once again on a path of economic development and domination also. Now, these led to the formation of G7, in which Canada and Australia were also included. So from G5 to G7. Then Russia was included as G8, but then later on they asked Russia to withdraw from it, so it was back to G7. And G5 did not include Canada and Australia, and so they had included that. So that continues. Now, from G7, it became very clear that they were also only looking after the interests of the developed countries, and so why should the rest of them cooperate? And the policies they were looking at were quite different. They now had the excess capital, and they could deploy that excess capital elsewhere, and they were interested in opening up the markets. The WTO was used as that mechanism. Now, meanwhile, when the economy of Japan became better, there was a pressure so that they should change the parity of yen to dollar so that their exports to developed countries become more expensive and the import of the developed countries become less expensive. However, that changeover was not that smooth, but be that as it may, they were therefore, besides the European country, able to incorporate Japan into their system as G7, and much later, Korea would also be inducted into their system. Now, the response in the developing countries was formation of G77 in 1954, and however, though that organization just had a particular program, it has not been very effective because the power is not there. So 125 countries attended recently in Cuba, Havana, and it's called G77 plus China. China is not a full-fledged member. China, on the other hand, after it had become reasonably well developed in the 90s, set up Shanghai Cooperative Organization. But its initial emphasis was and continues to be the Eurasian countries, the six countries start with the name ending stans: Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and so on, and Mongolia, and plus India, and Pakistan, and Russia, right? So this is the grouping. It's headquartered in China, but it is widely believed that it is the organization which is dominated by China. Now, second was around 2000, Russia, China, India got together to form BRIC, and Brazil, of course, right? So Brazil is the biggest country in South America. Russia, one of the important countries in Europe, or Eurasia rather, and had a good influence in the other Eurasian countries that you just mentioned. China, which was now beginning to show its economic and financial muscle, and becoming stronger militarily also. And then India, which was also beginning to grow fast of about 10% during that particular period. And now, in the recent conference, BRICS, this has become additional 6 countries, and 6 countries are UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia, then Argentina. Now, I would like to talk about the geopolitics of this. The other associations I briefly mentioned, Saarc, did not work out very well, though it continues. India set up Indian Ocean Rim Conference, but there's more for maritime collaboration. And China has a whole series of infrastructure projects with which it has been trying, which we will come specifically. That what is this BRI, through which the infrastructure is developed and financed. What influence that? Now, just we hold on to the BRICS and G20. G20 recently in Delhi, a few weeks ago, announced a particular project where 8 countries, one of them being EU, signed up to have what is now called as an acronym IMEEC, which is India, Middle East, Europe. I also stand for Israel, and so on. Now, if you look at the map, this means from west coast of India, not decided where from, but Gujarat ports will be very, very convenient, more efficient, tying it up together, coming to El Jabel port, and from there is a train line which is supposed to be there within Saudi Arabia and UAE, then goes via Jordan to Israel, and then to Uranus, the Greek port, very old historical port. Now, some people have saying positive things about it, some are saying negative things about it. But first of all, we remember that it's a corridor. It's not just rail and shipments. That there are multiple projects in mind. They include pipelines for petroleum, undersea cables for 5G networks, telecom networks, possibly for the electric transmission, transfer of electric energy, then hydrogen projects, then food parks along with the road, and then now the two, three things which should be noticed, that the rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and we should remember the Shia and the Sunni angle to it. There are three quote unquote now major Islamic powers, but we should add a fourth one, Indonesia, which sometimes we forget because it's in the Far East. And potentially Pakistan, but Pakistan has played out its cards badly. So we come to that this politics is played in Middle East, and how this project fits into that also, plus other things.